Okay. Hi, this is Greg Suddy on Soccer. I am here with San Diego Soccer's captain, Kraig Chiles. Craig, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me this morning.
You got it, Greg. I'm happy to be on.
So, you've had a pretty long career with the San Diego Sockers, but what I'm going to talk about a little bit before that, you were born in Torrance, California, correct?
Yep.
And how old were you when the family came to Poway?
I think I was in like the second grade ish. So most of my memories are San Diego, um, and older. I don't have a lot of memories of LA. I was pretty young while we moved.
So I know that one of your passions, I'm going to throw a line at you and go in a little bit of a different direction. I know one of your passions is fishing. And I know that you have sort of grown up fishing. Your dad taught you how to fish, and you've been fishing pretty much all your life. Let's talk about just that passion of your life, what you've been doing this summer, maybe if you've been going out on the water a little bit, just what you got going. Let's hear some fish stories.
Yeah, fishing is just one of the hobbies that I enjoy, and lucky enough to live in the city of San Diego, where offshore fishing and ocean fishing is as good as anywhere else in the world. People are
Right.
flying in from all over the country to San Diego to go offshore fishing for their opportunity to catch bluefin and yellowtail and yellowfin, and so I'm just lucky to live in San Diego where I can fish, locally in the lakes and rivers and streams, and you can jump out in the ocean and go for trophy fish as well. And so it's a blessing to live in the city where I have the opportunity to kind of do all of the above.
So, but you're not just doing saltwater fishing, are you? You're still going out to the lakes and doing some freshwater stuff too, as well, aren't you?
Yeah, obviously you kind of learn on the rivers and the little ponds and lakes. And it's been helpful getting my kids locally out there and having them fish a little bit. Going offshore fishing
Sure.
is hard and costly, and so yeah, you can't do that every day. But getting out and just messing around with some small fish at the pond is fun for everybody as well.
So I'm a scuba diver and I'm a sailor. I've never really been big on throwing the line, although I've done some surf fishing. Most of the fishing that I've done has been spear fishing. So it's a completely different environment. But I super appreciate it. To your point about going out on the water from people traveling in, um, to do that. There's all kinds of sport fishing fleets here in San Diego, and it is top quality, world class fishing. I've gone out a few times, maybe a dozen times, out of some of the different landings that are in the San Diego area, half day boats, that kind of thing. It's not far enough. It's not far out enough. It's not long enough to actually have a chance to get the yellowtail or the bluefin. But getting the sand bass is a fun. It's a fun afternoon and a good time to spend, and especially like you're saying with your kids. So you got two boys and a daughter, and I guess these guys are starting to be some pretty good fisher people themselves.
Yeah, my kids enjoy fishing, and honestly, it's just getting outdoors and having a good time and getting out of the house. And so fishing has been a great family sport for all of us, and I think my kids will enjoy fishing for the long haul.
Um, all right, so let's talk a little bit about your career. You went to school at Poway High, and I had the privilege of being part of a small group of fans from San Diego Sockers that I guess it was last summer. Forgive me for my timeline because I'm an old guy and I kind of lose time along the way. But I guess it was last summer that you were inducted into the Hall of Fame at the Poway High School.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct. No, yeah, great accomplishment, and
And that was a great. Go ahead.
yeah, something I didn't foresee happening, in my time at the high school, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely an honor and a privilege, and had the opportunity to go back on campus where you were and do a little speech for some of the people in attendance. And yeah, it's a great honor. And I've always been the type of player that tries to give back to the community of San Diego, but in particular the community I was born and raised in, which is Poway. And so, anytime I can support anything Poway related, it's something that I try to do.
It was an interesting class that you were part of there too, because I mean there was a recognized military. I guess he was a colonel possibly. There was a stunt driver actor from the movies from Hollywood that was there. There was also a woman, I can't remember who she was, that was part of your inductee class. It was a great class of people that you were part of.
Yeah, no, she was one of the best, I believe, cello players in the world. Celloist, I don't know what it would be called, but I think she was a world renowned, musician who played the cello. But yeah, no, it was super fun, good
That's right.
experience,
That's right.
and yeah, a big honor.
Well, it's huge to be recognized along, during the course of your career, during the course of your life. It's really cool to be recognized and to get that kind of I don't know, honor recognition from that far back in the day. Obviously, you hit the ground running playing soccer at that level and being recognized from the high school. When did you actually start playing soccer, Kraig?
I think I
As a
was
kid?
5 or 6 years old. 5 or 6 years old in a standard recreational program, just like majority of the kids around here.
What made you as an athlete choose soccer as a kid? Why did you go to soccer instead of baseball or football?
I played baseball as well growing up, for Poway Little League, and played soccer. And honestly, I think I was 12 or 13 doing both sports, and at that point, you kind of make a decision and focus in on one sport. And my older brother was a very talented soccer player as well, and so it kind of ran in the family. Um we just kind of funneled into that direction or that avenue.
So when you went on from after high school, when you went on to San Diego State University, a few years prior to that, I started going down to Aztec Bowl. Obviously I was a big Sockers fan as well, and I sort of got wind of the fact that our local college had a great soccer outfit organization thing going on right there. I went and watched Eric Ronaldo and Marcelo Balboa playing in San Diego for San Diego State, and caught you a couple of times on the San Diego State field. Didn't know where that was going to go at the time, but you got some recognition at State also, didn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, not in the San Diego State Hall of Fame, but no, I mean, I have nothing but positive uh, thoughts and experiences from my days at San Diego State. It was a transition period from being, a decent youth soccer player to a professional adult, by the time I left that organization. And so, Lev Kirshner, really helped mentor and guide a lot of us players there at San Diego State. We had a successful campaign when I was there, and I'm super proud to be part of the Aztec alumni, and I'm always following and supporting the team still today. I think they actually picked up a 12-0 win yesterday, which is like got to be in the top two or three results in program history. And so they're doing great. I believe they've only conceded a goal, if that, all season, and so they have one of the best defensive records, and they're kind of on fire right now. And so San Diego State plays USD, I believe, October 14th, and part of that will be an alumni ceremony and game, and I'll definitely be at that game at Snapdragon Stadium.
And of course, that's kind of huge because Brian Quinn is the coach of USD.
Yeah, no, there's obviously a ton of familiar faces.
So you're kind of humble, Kraig, because I mean you didn't even, I sort of kind of lead you into it, but all Pac-10 3 times when you were at state, for included in the team first team all Pac-10 your senior year. So no, I mean there was some you were producing on the field and people were recognizing it before you got out of school.
Yeah. No, that's
so
correct.
after your college career, you played a little bit in MLS. And how did that work out? I mean, I don't even know at that point in time. I wasn't really following MLS that closely. But Chivas USA was a Los Angeles-based team that picked you up for what, a season? Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, 2009. I was drafted by Preki, who's obviously an indoor legend in his own right. And so, I got brought into that team, and there were a ton of very experienced players that I learned a lot from, including, Jesse March, who was coaching over in Europe, and Jim Curtin, who's the Philadelphia Union coach, Ante Razoff, who's I believe at LAFC, Claudio Suarez, who's a Mexican national team legend. And I think
Wow.
the list goes on and on. Rafael Vicky, also coaching the Champions League for Basel a year ago. And so that locker room had an unbelievable amount of experience. And it was a really good learning process for me, going from one of the better players on my college team and in the conference to, trying to make a name for myself in the MLS at the next level. And it's not easy to do, and the MLS is a very athletic game, and it just honestly didn't fit my skill set to a T. And so I was competitive in the MLS for that year, and I did well, and I learned a lot. But when it was all said and done, it was going to be very difficult for me to have a very good MLS career. With the athletic base that some of those players have, and in particular nowadays. But in 2009, the level was super high as well, and that was the first year of the David Beckham transition, and so that was fun to be part of, and kind of put a huge spotlight on everybody that year. But all in all, I have nothing but good thoughts about my little MLS campaign, and it all worked out the way it should have worked out when you look back on it from now.
One of the things that I've looked at with as athletes progress, mentioned this on one of my previous interviews last week, when you're looking at the kids in college that are playing college sports, those kids, young people, were the superstars on their high school team. Every last one of those guys on the field were the superstars on their high school team. When you look at the pros, every one of those people were the superstars on the college team. And one of the excelling, noticeable people on the field. So once you get into the pros, as you're saying, I mean, the skill level is high, and it's a whole different. It moves into a whole different area. After you played with Chivas, how long was it before you started getting together with the core group of guys that ended up being the San Diego Sockers? I mean, I know there was, you guys played together with the Nomads, you guys played together with the Fusion, but you and Mercury Alley and Martin and Medina and a bunch of you guys knew each other before the San Diego Sockers actually launched. How long had you guys played together or known each other?
Well, during college, we had been playing together the whole time. And so by the time I left the MLS, the San Diego Sockers were in discussion of starting for their first year. And we were all super familiar with each other. We won the NPSL National Championship I believe in '06, '05, '07, something around there. And obviously that's a really big accomplishment to look back on now. The level was still very high, and it was a lot of really good collegiate players coming back in their off season to play. Which still is the same, that's the same league that Albion Pros was in for a long time, and that the Flash came back in, and Boca and all those teams historically. And so we were really familiar with each other, and we had been playing. I'd been playing summer league ball. I obviously went up to LA. I think in that 1 year period, a lot of the Fusion guys were starting to play in the local indoor leagues, and Phil had this idea of bringing the San Diego Sockers back, and that core group of players, immediately were like, okay, well, we're all in, and we've got a couple other people that you should be aware of that we've been playing with. And so it all kind of happened organically, and I left the second preseason camp up in LA after my initial meeting, and I realized that the likelihood of me signing a contract at Chivas wasn't going to be super high. They were discussing a loan to the NASL at the time and all this other stuff. And so I drove back down to San Diego, and I went into Lev Kirshner's office, and I had 3 classes left to graduate with my degree. And I begged the administration to allow me to crash the 3 courses that I needed. And I came in probably 6 weeks late to those classes. And I had multiple meetings and sit downs with those teachers, and explained the situation to them, and told them that I would make up all of the work. And so before you know it, I was from that exit meeting in LA to, the classroom probably within 2 or 3 days. And I was back into a college groove of things. And right as I'm sitting there in class, I get a couple messages from Cheeky and Nate Etherington and some of the boys, Aaron Susi, and it was like, "Hey, dude, this guy Phil Salvaggio is bringing the San Diego Sockers back, and it's going to be mostly local players. Are you interested?" And for me, it was a no brainer. I never stopped playing. I didn't think too much about it. I was playing locally indoor, and I was playing in a couple outdoor leagues and just doing it for fun and having a good time. And so when I heard there was an opportunity to play professional indoor soccer and stay locally, I jumped on it.
How much of an impact did Paul Wright and Aaron Susi have in sort of mentoring you and bringing you in as sort of senior members of the team?
A lot, a lot. There was a ton of experience in that initial team for me to look up to and learn from. Braden Cloutier was in that team, who was a professional coach for OCFC. Sean Bowers was in that team as a player, and obviously we know about his accolades. And Paul Wright, I think was in his 23rd or 4th year. And don't forget Zé Roberto came in that year, and he was an unsung hero that nobody knew about, right? And Dan Antoniak had 10 years of experience. And so, it was the starting lineup. It was a running joke at one point. I think the starting lineup had 100+ years of experience on the field with Sean and Paul and Susie and all those guys. And so all of them helped me a lot, but truthfully, in those initial 5 or 6 years, Susie was the most influential. We played together in the same line. We played in twos. He was on the tail end of his career. I was in the beginning of my indoor career. And him and I had this San Diego State Aztec connection. And so we really bonded and broed out for those times. And he gave me the opportunity to have so much success. There could have been another veteran that came in and was like, you're going to come in when I'm done, rookie, and had this different mentality. And his mentality was to give me what I needed to shine and to supplement, what I didn't have on the field for the team. And so he would make substitutions that put me in good positions. He would get me on the field, more minutes than he played. And he really looked after me both on and off the field. And I probably have, owe Susie a lot of credit to the success I've had, not only just scoring goals and learning the game and knowing the boards and stuff like that, but also how to transition from a from a rookie to a player in their prime to a veteran to somebody that's kind of hanging on to the tail end of their career. And so there's an evolution to all of those stepping stones in your career. And I have seen many players fumble in their
Mm,
career by not making those adjustments, right? By wanting to still hold on to the number one attacking tag or whatever it is. And so, if you're not going to
right.
evolve and adapt, you're not going to last a long time. And Susie kind of taught me that. It's like, listen, right now the forward line consists of Tavoy, Christian Gutierrez, and myself. And I learned a lot about supporting those two. And we understand that Tavoy is in the prime of his career, and so is Christian. And I'm a supplemental player that's out there to encourage and help and monitor and mentor as much as I can. But my job is to not be the main front running attacking player. My job is to get Tavoy on the field when the team has possession of the ball deep, and my job is to get the hell off the field when the other team has the ball, so Christian can focus on the high press and the counterattack, and I can just filter in with those handful of minutes to, one, give them a break, and two, maybe help on free kicks, power plays, and some of the extracurricular stuff. And so, if I wanted to still be the man and push the void into the second line and do my thing, it would be tolerable probably from the organization because of what I've done, but at the same time, it wouldn't benefit the team as much, and it also wouldn't allow me to continue my career as long as I have. And so Susie taught me a lot about adapting and evolving and making sure that you change as a player. I'm not the player I was when I was 24 in the league in the beginning, and at the same time, um, I can help this team in a lot of different ways, and on the field is just one part of it.
When when you guys first opened up, when Phil brought the San Diego Sockers back, and the league was the PASL, um, the San Diego Sockers kind of dominated those for not the first year. I believe it was the California Cougars that won the first championship, but the San Diego
Yeah, but we
Sockers
weren't
won.
involved in that.
Well,
Greg,
that's
just
right.
the asterisks. We were not involved in the year the Cougars won. Brian Farber won. Miguel Alvarado won. Susie won that
Oh, that's right.
championship. And then he dropped down. In the
That's right.
following year, we entered the league and we dueled it out with the Cougars. They were still a very, very good team with Keeks Tovar. And we took down that national championship the first year we were in, which, to be honest, I think shocked everybody, including
Well,
ourselves.
to that point though, I mean, you mentioned the amount of veteran history that the team had, and also the team chemistry that existed at the time. Um, what I mean, you said it shocked you guys. Did it? I mean, from obviously, I'm just sitting in the stands at that time, but and in a lot of cases, I only was just then getting to know who some of these players were, but there was a lot. There was so much chemistry and so much veteran authority. Was it really a surprise to you guys that you were dominating and winning those games?
Greg, you ever seen an expansion team go 15-0? Because I have not, and we did not expect that to happen. We knew we were good, and we knew we'd be competitive. Phil's not dumb; he's not going to dump money into a team that's just going to get smoked. So we knew we had a chance. We knew we had some good players. We also knew we had a couple weak links at that time as well. Um, but it all kind of came together for us very seamlessly, and I think better than we could have expected. Winning the national championship in the first year is not the expectation we had going into it. Um, but yeah, we with each game we gain that confidence, and we recognize, like, oh, dude, we can really play at this level. And candidly, Greg, as you may know, the PASL was predominantly West Coast based, and the MISL at the time was predominantly East Coast based. And so,
Right.
yes, there was a league that in theory had some better teams that would have been a much better competition for us, and probably candidly a little bit better than us at the time. Although I think in any game we could have gone toe to toe with anybody, but that's all arguable. Um, and so we really, in those first few years, had 4 or 5 really competitive teams maybe, and 4 or 5 really average teams and then a couple decent ones. Like Vegas was really good, and Stockton Cougar was really good, and Anaheim Bolts came in and made an impact for a year or two. And so it was a really good experience and super fun. But I think we were all excited when the two leagues kind of came together and formed a real national powerhouse. The MASL at the time was very talented and absolutely had some elite level teams like Milwaukee and Baltimore at the time who were dominating. KC had a very good team with the Heat and Leo and Waltman and all them. And so it gave us an opportunity to push ourselves to that top level. And those were great experiences for all of us. And the PASL was nice. But the merger of the MASL really made it, the top the top tier professional indoor league for us.
One of the things that I found really cool about the earliest years of the PASL was the way that the championship was put together, because you guys played to a league championship and then ended up playing a Mexican team, whether it was Mexico City or Guadalajara, to take that championship. And at the time, I think for 2 seasons, it was actually called the North American Championship. What was that like? I mean, were you playing it? That was sort of taking on a whole new team, wasn't it? I mean, you didn't have any experience with these players.
No, and to be honest, it was not fun, and it didn't make any sense, Greg. I know it was fun for you to watch, but why would we participate in a league where we play 14 other teams a whole bunch of times and then allow 2 random teams from Mexico to come up with whatever roster they wanted to bring and then compete for a national championship when they hadn't played league games? What it did do was make the semis and the finals freakishly competitive with Gianni Martinez and his players and Chile and all the guys that were playing. But candidly, we all left the arena every time after it was 3 red cards and a fight and all this stuff, and was like, why the hell does this keep happening? Why aren't we playing Vegas in the final? Why aren't we playing Cincinnati in the final? We're allowing these teams to come up and go. And if they wanted to be in the league, they should be in the league, which is what's happening now, right? It's like, come compete. And if you get to the final, you deserve it. Not a direct berth for teams that are hibernating down south and nobody knows anything about. And so, as a player, we were all annoyed by it, but at the same time, we didn't care. We showed up to those semis to win 2 games and lift the championship. And honestly, we achieved that every single time we played those teams coming north from south.
So now you mentioned when the MISL and the PASL came together for the MASL, and yeah, it did appear that from the fans' perspective, it did appear that was going to be a new environment. There were some viable teams on the East Coast, Midwest, that as some of which you mentioned, that stayed together even though their original league had folded. They stayed together. PASL thing came together with the MISL. All the principals were able to figure out how to do this thing. I did find it somewhat laughable that first season where the Eastern Division played with a multi-point system, and the rest of the league was a single point goal, which I thought was pretty laughable kind of way of kind of fixing a problem, but got through it. The San Diego Sockers have always been, even all the way through this transition, the San Diego Sockers maintained the level of play to where they were a team to be reckoned with all the way through. I mean, there was never a drop off at any point in any season where they became a mediocre side. In fact, we'll get to that in a minute. But how do you feel about I don't know about transition, but the evolution of the San Diego Sockers team? You've been a part of it all the way through, where it went from, a bunch of local guys coming together with chemistry and knowledge of each other to the team that exists today.
Yeah, no, it's been a big transition, and the dynamic of the team is definitely different than it used to be. But for me, your background and your ideas as a player and where you come from and what position you play and all that stuff doesn't necessarily matter when you get on the field, right? It's like the soccer is the world sport. Soccer is an international language. You can come from Mexico or you can be born in Poway, and good decisions on the ball are good decisions on the ball. Bad decisions are bad decisions. And so for me, I wanted to win. I wanted to win the championship. I wanted to win more games. I didn't care where the players came from. I didn't care if they spoke English. I didn't care if they didn't. It was like, dude, is the kid good? Is he going to help us win? Is he going to play his part of his role for the team? And if the answer was yes, then we didn't care. We were supportive of bringing him into the locker room and making it happen. And so, yes, it is different than the team used to be, but at the same time, the objective is to win. And if it takes getting international players to win, then let's do it. And if the local kids aren't at the level, that's unfortunate, but that's not going to impact the soccer's ability to be competitive in the league. And so it's hard for local kids to make an impact in the San Diego Soccers. We are one of the better franchises in the entire country. And from that standpoint, it's a little bit maybe sad or disappointing. But at the same time, this is professional soccer. There is no second place award. There is no pity points or sympathy points. It's like, do better or get a new job. And so we found players that were going to do better and that were going to be better and that were going to give us a better chance to win. And I think we all recognize that. And players like myself, it didn't matter to me their background or their history as a player. It was a matter of what they're going to bring to the table for the collective group. And a lot of these players have obviously shown up here and shined.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have to assume that the scouting is in a large part Phil and Renee that are putting it together, and who they bring into the team. And it looks to me like there is a real good eye for the team, the player that's going to, get with the program, the player that is going to gel with the existing roster. I've noticed some players have come in over the last few years, and good players, good skill players, but for whatever reason, didn't stay with the team that long, because it looked to me anyway that maybe they weren't part of the team concept, or didn't take part of the program that Phil was putting forward. Whatever that is, of course, that's just a speculation from a fan on the sidelines. But yeah, and the chemistry seems to be working really well with you guys, and it seems to be something that the right player can come in and become a part of that chemistry relatively quickly, if they just take the lead that's given to them from the sidelines. So when the MASL first gets going, the Monterey Flash take the first championship, and Baltimore comes through with 3 in a row. During that period of time, the Sockers, like I said earlier, were always a legitimate playoff team all the way through, and building on the way, it looked like to me. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the COVID year, and I don't necessarily mean the COVID play the season, but the year that the season was discontinued shortly before the playoffs started. How did that affect the players?
I don't think it made a massive impact on the players. Specifically, some handled it better than others, right? If you're on the tail end of your career, that was not a beneficial season off. But it was just, something that we had to figure out. We played that Tacoma game, and then we all got home. And then there was like rumors of this outbreak in different cities in the country, and we're like, oh, maybe a couple weeks shutdown. Nobody really knew the extent of what was going to happen, and so, when it's all said and done, it's a bummer. But it was just an unavoidable situation that you just had to pick your head up and move on. There wasn't anything to be mad about or sad about. It was like it was what it was, and we moved on from that year, and we moved into the next year. And candidly, we had a very slow preseason considering the COVID situation, and we had players within the beginning of that camp who picked up COVID. And as everybody did, I'm sure, there was like this revolving door of availability, right? He was in, and then he was out, and then he got COVID. Then it was, had to test negative, and it took a week, and all this, ups and downs of that year. And so we didn't have the most successful campaign throughout that COVID season. But I can tell you, we took a couple of those trips. I think we were in Florida and played 4 games, and then maybe we were in Texas and played a couple extra games. And I think at one point, probably game 5 or 6 into the year, we hadn't been doing that well, and we had a little bit of an epiphany or a light bulb moment of a different style of play, and playing a little bit less of a transition game and a little bit more of a defensive minded game, where we were going to sit back a little bit, and yes, we were going to try to counter if it was on, but we were going to make sure that we had 6 bodies behind the ball, and not give up a lot of offensive opportunities for the other team. And I think we all bought into that at the right time, and it snowballed into us, winning the last 7 or 8 games, and picking up that championship, which, is a unbelievable achievement considering the amount of talent dispersed across a very limited amount of teams for that year. And so it was a great, it was a crappy way for COVID to end one season, but to win that next year with such a talented pool of players left in the league was a great achievement, and something that's always going to be special to us.
Yeah, I was in Kansas City for that semifinal weekend, where all 4 of the teams came together, and it was pretty interesting because the outcome, in order for the championship to not be played in St. Louis, the outcome had to be Ontario and San Diego winning their rights through going through. And I think that most people would have considered both the Sockers and the Fury as the underdog in those games, because of the way that they had come through the regular season. Not necessarily because of the way that they were playing at the time, but because of what their win-loss records looked like and whatnot. And so it was very cool being in Southern California, and it was very cool because of how that turned out being played in Ontario. But it must be mentioned, people all know this, of course, I would guess, but it must be mentioned that both the Tacoma Stars and the San Diego Sockers played that entire season on the road. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think that Chris Toth had moved up to, I think it was Chris, that had moved up to Toronto or to Tacoma that year, and then left after that season, played a whole season with the Tacoma Stars and never played in Tacoma, which is which is kind of an interesting little fact. But it was an outstanding finish you guys put together, and of course I was also up in Ontario for those games, and tight fought match. I think maybe the first time that we could actually look at the Ontario franchise and consider them a rival, because up to that point, it was of course they've considered the Sockers a rival since day one, but the analogy that I've used in the past is the Los Angeles Dodgers don't look at the Padres as a rival, but the Padres look at the Dodgers as a rival. And that's the Dodgers situation is sort of where the Sockers have been in that relationship. But that was a time where Ontario sort of came through, and it was an exciting championship series up there. Don't you recall something similar to that?
Yeah, I recall that. I recall being in that Kansas City Ontario Fury game in KC, and our whole team was thinking like, damn, I hope we don't get KC. Come on, Ontario. Come on, Ontario. We felt that KC that year was so big and strong and powerful. And to be honest, we played them earlier in the year, and they just bulldogged us. And we obviously were a little more technical and undersized and small, and we did not think KC was a very good matchup for us that year. And to be honest, if Fury wouldn't have pulled it off in the last minute of the game like they did, that championship
Right.
banner may be hanging in Casey's arena. And so when we got Ontario, we were excited. And to be honest, which was super awkward thinking back on it, we were kind of supporting each other. Fury was because we both kind of had shitty years, and Fury was like kind of supporting us. We were kind of supporting them. We had a lot of players who crossed over each other. And so when we got the Fury in the final, we all looked at it as like a win-win, kind of like, all right, well, one of the two of the West Coast teams is going to take this thing down. And yeah, that game was a battle, right? And it could have went either direction. And there were some, critical moments. Like I gave up that power play goal, I think, with 2 minutes left in either the mini game or the game. And if they would have capitalized on that, they would have been hanging their banner in the championship. And so I remember
Yep.
sitting in that penalty bench, thinking like, oh my God, I hope Pino and the defensive players can kill this power play. And if I get an opportunity to get back on the field, I need to do my best to make an impact. And it wasn't my best year that year. I had a couple nagging injuries, but to come out of the penalty box and assist the winner to Serta, was a super special moment. And and something that yeah, I'll cherish for a long time, and really helped us get over the hump and get that first championship back, I think in 7-8
Right.
seasons or something like that. So it was really good experience. And a great moment, and probably one of the championships I'm most proud of when it's all said and done.
You reminded me just now of a moment that took place in Kansas City. You guys, your team, the Sockers were warming up on the field, and I was sort of strolling around the circle of you guys stretching with the camera, and I noticed that you had some kind of a black strap on your thigh, and I made a comment. I made a comment to you of, how are you feeling? It looks like you might be injured or something like that. And you looked back up at me and says, "What, are you new at this, buddy?" Sonny.
Yeah.
He says, "What, are you new at this, Sonny?"
Yeah.
I felt like
we're not telling
was,
you. Yeah.
It was one of those how fast can I run away moments,
No, yeah, that was a challenging year for us on the field until we got to playoffs, and I think we really figured out a system that helped us be competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the following season, and by the way, I think to your point, I think it's interesting to really establish that the teams that did not participate in that year released the majority of their best players on loan to the teams that were playing. So yeah, so the rosters were stacked in a lot of on a lot of teams. And and I also want to mention, how much I really felt for Clayson DeLima when he took the injury at the end of that one game, and had to get. Of course, you worry about the concussion and the injury, and if he's going to recover or not, because it looked like he hit pretty hard, upside down, pretty much landed on his neck, on his head. But I also have to extend the same kind of feeling sorry for Chewy, man, because he wasn't prepared to go into the net right there at that crucial moment of the year. He hadn't played all season long, and I love Chewy, but man, that was rough for him to have to
Greg,
go out there and then give up that winning goal. It was
Greg, how many
yeah.
teams in our league have two legitimate goalkeepers that can compete to win a national championship? Not a lot. And Fury did not have it that year. And that year we had William Vanzella and we had Boris Pardo. And that could have been the straw in the hat that helped us win the championship. If their backup goalie would have been Chris Toth, that goal probably wouldn't have gone in, without any disrespect to Chewy, who is a former teammate and friend as well. But you build your roster, and you cut corners in certain areas, and you overbuild in certain areas, and they put all their money in the DeLima hat, which is cool, and he did great for him that year, but they did not have an adequate backup, and we internally were dealing with having two of the best goalies in the country as well, right? And that's a hard dynamic to monitor within your locker room. And truthfully,
Right.
William and Boris both that year played unbelievable roles and were, the linchpin in helping us win. And so the difference of the
Right.
championship and the difference of talking about what happened 20 years later is such a fine margin that maybe they should have got
Yeah.
Chris Toth. If they would have paid Chris Toth $400 more a month or something, maybe he would have signed a year earlier and maybe they would have won that championship. And so, you look back on a lot of random stuff happened and you just got to take it play by play and quarter by quarter. And I can also vividly remember, Greg, we ended the game in Florida, a 4 or 5 game. No, and maybe it was in Kansas City or no, it was Florida. And before we got to the locker room, we had heard that Clay and Florida selected us as their game. And remember, the one seed got to pick
That's
the
right.
team they wanted to play.
I
And we
remember
got in
that.
that locker room and was like, okay, bro, you want it? You can have all of it. And so we had an unbelievable amount of fire and ammunition for Florida because they didn't think about it for a day. They didn't wait a little bit of time. We literally got off the field. I'm still taking my shin guards off, and the word was like, Florida picked us. Everybody's talking about it. Florida came at us one. They won us first, and we were like, all right, they can have it. And so I think we shocked them that year, but we had a lot of motivation because of the way that the playoffs shook out. Being able to select your opponent is like, it just adds fuel to the fire, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Right. 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 Well, and then of course, the following season, as fate would have it, you end up meeting Florida for the championship.
Yeah, and that Florida team, dude, with Ian Bennett the year before in COVID and the amount of players they
Right.
had
Right.
on that roster was unbelievable. Hugo Silva is an absolute animal. And candidly, Renner Haas is a very good goalie as well.
Oh, absolutely.
But during the season we won after COVID, Florida was doing their thing. We're like, okay, Florida looks really good. Hugo Silva was put on a visa hold at one point halfway
Right.
through that season. And I think that immediately gave us that extra 10% mental advantage over Florida, where we're like, all right, dude, the main goalie, their best goalie, and what we called, one of the better goalies in the league, absolutely top
Right.
2 or 3 goalies at the time, was out of their team. And then we're looking, going like, all right, Boris is firing on all cylinders. We're all here.
Yep.
And so we felt confident playing Florida in that championship. It was a tight game, obviously, but I think earlier in the year, Tavoy went hammer on them and maybe pulled 5 or 6 goals out of his hat in the first 2 quarters. And we knew we had some really good matchups. Tavoy made it really hard on Chad Vandegrift and Alves and all those big defensive players they had. And so we felt good going into the championship. And we knew we had to, get beat twice at home, which historically, is not very easy to do if even possible. And so that was an unbelievable season for all of us. And on paper, for me, after having injuries in that COVID year and not performing that well in the playoffs,
Right.
um,
Right.
being able to come and be an impact player on the field, during the run of season and put together a very good, run of points in the playoffs was something that made me proud and made me feel good about myself and gave me kind of that extra confidence that I could evolve my role and play less minutes and still make a major impact within the team. And yeah, all of that was great. And I honestly probably couldn't have written, a
Right.
better run of the season for myself as an individual, if I could have. So, I mean, the stars aligned for me personally and the organization that year. And, I'll look back in 30 or 40 years and the one year where it just couldn't go wrong for me would be that year. And an unbelievable moment.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. You know, as I think, well, I know you for a fact. In fact, I know you know this because you ran into me in the parking lot one game when you overheard me saying something to, I can't remember who I was talking to, about the um, the rumors that were running around that COVID year wasn't a legitimate championship, and you overheard me say that, and you sort of piped in, you know, Greg, that was as legitimate as it gets, and of course that was my point at the time in the conversation, that of course it was as legitimate as it gets, but it was kind of a stamp on the end of that to come up and win that next championship the following year when all of the teams were back in the mix again. So last season, the Chihuahua Savage sort of had their way with the league, both in the MASL and the MASL2, which is interesting because the San Diego Sockers had previously done that with both of their teams a couple of years earlier. In fact, it was two years earlier. What's your take on last season and how that all finished?
Obviously we're a little bit disappointed in the way it ended, in that game with Chihuahua at home, and losing in that, overtime goal was heartbreaking. But it's not easy to win the championship, and
Right.
everything kind of has to come together, all the little details, and for whatever reason, it wasn't meant to be. And Chihuahua was a fantastic team and capitalized on everything they needed to do to get themselves into that final. And no disrespect to the East Coast teams, but we were looking at that semifinal leg as the national championship, and we were, just one tiny element off of probably walking through Baltimore at home, just like Chihuahua did. And so
Right.
it wasn't the best year for us, but when it's all said and done, there were still a lot of positives, and the team morale and chemistry was very good, and it gives us a really good platform to move into this upcoming season.
Well, talking about this upcoming season and talking about Chihuahua, there's Monterey, Chihuahua, and Guadalajara is going to be on the roster or on the schedule this season. Um, as you said earlier, sort of called me out a little bit about when was the last time you saw an expansion team go 15-1. But yeah, once, in fact, one time ever. but
Hey, but remember, Chihuahua went 0-8, weren't they? 0-9, 0-10. They were something unbelievable. We all knew Chihuahua was super talented, but for whatever reason, in those first 7 or
I
8
do
games, you
recall.
remember that? It was something weird.
I do.
0-9, 0-7, where we were like, holy cow. And then at one point, 7-0, 8-0. So they completely sorted it out and figured it out. But it's not easy to do.
Right. What do you see coming this season? Obviously, we lost Florida, and San Diego has benefited a little bit from that by getting Drew Ruggles on our side. Picked up Gabriel Costa. Can you talk about bringing those two guys into the San Diego Soccer's roster?
Yeah, Drew is one of the most experienced defenders in the league, and I think has picked up multiple Defender of the Year awards, and gives us a really good left-footed option in terms of free kicks and set pieces as well. And so Drew's going to come in and be a great part of this organization, and Drew wants to win the championship like he did in Milwaukee, and sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of your personal desire to put the team in a position to win, as we all have. And Drew's going to come in and play his role for the team, and I'm sure he's going to be an absolute menace for some of these West Coast teams to deal with in the back. And he just helps supplement and add to what we already have, which is a great defensive unit. Boris and Drew have a good relationship, which is important, and I think Drew's going to be a great dude inside the locker room and on the field. And for me, without bromancing at all, but I remember going to Cheeky and Phil and being like, dude, you can give Costa my contract if you can get that dude here, because he's the best player, I think, in the league at the moment. I mean, last year he was unplayable at times. I remember a game in Ontario where we literally couldn't touch him, and if he just had a little bit more support around him, it'd be game over. And so Costa seems like a very smart kid, and he seems like somebody who knows what he wants, and his talent is through the roof. And so to pick up one of the best midfielders in the entire league, and one of the most experienced quality defenders in the league, and really lose minimal pieces, it puts us in a really positive position moving into next season and gives us a really good opportunity to win. But I can tell you as a player, I am absolutely looking forward to Costa joining our team and doing his thing, and I'll just be waiting for him to dime me up at the back post and tap balls in, because his creativity and technical skill set and vision is like through the roof at the moment. And it's similar to Charlie Gonzalez when he came over,
Right.
A really good playmaker, really good vision, unbelievable passer of the ball. And he just makes it easier for Tavoy and myself and Christian and offensive players because the quality is there, and they're going to find a lot of assists, and it gives us targets a lot of opportunity to put the ball in the back of the net. And so, adding those two players are immediate shoe-in starters, in my opinion, or immediate 15-man roster players. And so, they're only going to push the competitive environment at practice, and they're only going to make this team better.
And they both had a really good showing at the TST as well. They really sort of outshined a lot of shining players at the TST, and it was interesting to me because it kind of looked like, okay, so here are these two guys, could be argued the two top players and two top stars on either side of the ball at the TST, and as soon as the TST is over, Salvaggio steps up and signs them both. I thought that was pretty classic.
Yeah, it's
I know
the rich
they
get
may not.
richer.
The rich do get richer. Yeah. So, Kraig, are you going to have anything to do with the World Mini Football World Cup this time around?
No, I won't be going to the Middle East. But I will be going to the MASL Combine on behalf of the Soccers as their,
Gotcha.
player evaluator and the one who does the draft. And so last year, Phil and I went to Mesquite together. This year, I believe that trip may overlap, and so Phil is going to go to Qatar, wherever that event is, and
Right.
I'm going to go to Utica to help
Okay.
with the draft. So yeah, no, I'll be helping to evaluate players, and I'll be over there at the draft, coaching and supporting, and working as a Soccer's staff member for that trip. But I won't be joining the team for that World Mini Football.
So, do you know anything? Can you speak to that at all? I mean, I know that in the past few years or a few World Cups, the San Diego Soccers were pretty hugely represented on both the United States and the Mexican side. Can you say anything about whether there's going to be that same sort of amount of representation for the team in Dubai?
Yeah, I believe there will be. I mean, obviously, Rene Ortiz is the Mexican national team coach, and Phil is the head coach of the Arena U.S. team, and so he can select whatever players he feels are in form. I mean, you can look at our roster, Greg, and think about how many Americans are eligible for the national team. And I would think it's Boris and Ruggles, maybe Felipe, right? I'm like thinking
Right.
through, and then obviously we have a heavier contingency of Hispanic players that may have the opportunity to go with Rene and the Mexican team, and so yes, the last game played at Ontario seemed like a Empire versus Chihuahua game. But when these
Yeah.
coaches are picking the World Mini Football national team to go win the World Cup, the club is less important than the ability of the player, right? So yes, there will be some soccer guys represented, but they're looking for the players that are going to show up and perform, not their buddies. And so I don't know any insight, but you can look around and figure it out. I'll bet you Costa's with Brazil, and I'll bet you Leo's with Brazil, and I'll bet you Christian's with Mexico, and I'll bet you Charlie's with Mexico. Escoto's going to go, and Felipe, Boris, and Ruggles I would think would be three names that are absolutely in the pool, if not immediately in the rosters for those trips. And so as a soccer's player, the more players that participate in that event, the better. You know, the more players that participate with Everton and the futsal national team, the better. The
Right.
more that the players play in the off season, the better they do. You know, my best campaigns in indoor came off of futsal national team off seasons for 7 or 8 years, and so the players got to play, and you got to play at a high level in the off season to show up and be in your best form for the MASL season. And so it's different for me, right? I've got to monitor my body and make sure that I don't put too many miles on my legs. Where that's different for Christian and Mitchell Cardenas and Pino. I mean, these guys are studs, and they're in the prime of their careers, and they're just so fit and so strong and so they just it's the full package. Some of these players, it's unbelievable. Every player, including myself, had limitations to their game, and there are a few of these guys that just could do it all, and they put the work in to support their ability, right? I mean, Mitchell is a great example. Christian as well is like, these guys. Christian could drop and go play for Ontario Fury and score 40 goals next year, like he did in El Paso, and not win the championship. But he showed up here, and he's like, I'm going to be the defensive player in that front line, and I'll get goals, and I'll get transition moments, but like, I'm here to win. And that kind of mentality with his skill set and fitness and ability is the reason that we win championships. We have players playing
Yep.
roles for this team that would be superstars on every other team.
Yep.
And it's just, we're just lucky to have the talent pool that we've got, being so close to TJ and being in such a wonderful city where a lot of people want to be. And so it's like, it's a no-brainer. You come live in San Diego, where the weather's nice year round, and there's job opportunities, and compete to win championship, and that's not that difficult to sell.
Right. So let's close out, Kraig, mentioning a little bit about what's coming in the future for the San Diego Sockers. Everybody knows that the San Diego Sockers are putting up a new venue in Oceanside, California. That's going to be not this coming season, but the following season is when that's expected to be open and going. Do you have any? I mean, I know online there's sort of a push for sentimentality about the last year at Pechanga, after the history that place has had for the Sockers over the years, over the decades. Do you have any sentimentality about that, or are you just excited to go to the new venue?
No, I do, and leaving the sports arena is bittersweet, because it's the fortress that was built by the old guard, with Quinny and Julie V and Bronco Segota and Gene Wilrich and all of them, and so carrying on the legacy inside that building was special. Winning those couple championships inside that building were special moments. But at the same time, you've got to look for greener pasture at some time. I can remember the transition from Del Mar Arena to the sports arena. And Greg, we had never lost a game in Del Mar, and we had won 4 championships in a row. And I remember talking to Phil casually, like fishing, and being like, why the hell are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. We are literally unbeatable in that arena. And, John Quintero was the main focal point pushing to get back into the sports arena because of the history. And it was a blessing, right, to get back there. And now moving up to Front Wave in Oceanside in a brand new arena is going to be an unbelievable experience. And I'm just hoping to hang on long enough to be part of it. I think about a month ago, I did a walkthrough in between some of my tournament games up there with Phil, and the size of the field, the locker rooms, the boxes, right? There's going to be 15 or 20 suites that are going to be available for rental, birthday parties, and board meetings and gatherings and stuff. And we're talking about you know, one of the newest arenas in the country that's going to be state of the art with
Right.
all of the new tricks and toys and gadgets. And so, you know, there's been some talk about, well, it's Oceanside isn't San Diego and Sports Arena is San Diego and this, that, and the other. And none of that matters. It's about making money. It's
Yep.
about being a profitable organization that can keep themselves afloat for the long haul. And the sports arena made it very difficult to turn a profit. And I think once we get
Right.
into the front wave arena and have full control of the dates and the venue and the games and all that stuff, it's only going to help us build that fan support and continue to help us, you know, win championships in the city of San Diego. And for me, being raised in San Diego, Oceanside is San Diego, and Poway is San Diego, and guess what? El
Absolutely.
Cajon is San
Absolutely.
Diego, and Solana
Absolutely.
Beach is San Diego. And so for those
Right.
outside of this state that are like, oh, they're moving to Oceanside, that must be super, super far. That's not how San Diegans look at it. The city of San Diego goes from San
Yep.
Ysidro to Oceanside to Alpine or something like that. And if you're within that bubble, then you're in San Diego. And so yes, it is the city of Oceanside within San Diego. Um, but you know,
Yep.
we want to be playing in front of big crowds on Saturday nights in Oceanside. And if some of them come down the 5 from San Clemente, we're cool with that. And if they come down the 78 corridor into Oceanside, good for them. And if it's too far for people, you know, that's unfortunate. And you know, at this point there's 15 different professional sports franchises in Southern California, and you know, you can support one of them. There are
Right.
people that drive up to LAFC games from San Diego. And so living in you know, Poway and telling me that Oceanside's too
Yep.
far, it's the same distance to the
Yep.
sports arena. It doesn't
Yeah, and
go ahead. Did I lose you? Go ahead.
I was just gonna. I was up in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago, and talking with one of the broadcasters up there, and he was talking about the Oceanside Soccers, and I said, well, I mean, if it's the Oceanside Soccers, then it's the Kent Stars, it's the Allen Sidekicks, it's the Towson Blast, it's the St. Charles Ambush, it's the Independence Comets. You know, I mean,
Yep.
you can't have it both ways, right?
No, and you
So,
just saw Mesquite
um,
rebranded, right? Oh, Mesquite
yeah, they're
just
and they're
did the rebrand
right,
from Mesquite Outlaws to the Texas Outlaws. It's, you
right.
know, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right. So, Kraig, thank you. I've kept you a little bit over an hour. I appreciate your time and candid conversation with me. As always, it's a blast talking to you. I look forward to seeing you in the next month or two um, down
Yep,
in San Diego. And I really appreciate your time, Kraig. Thanks for joining me. Kraig Chiles, San Diego Soccer's captain.
you got it. Thanks,
Yep.
Greg. See you guys. Have a great
All
day.
right, man.